The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I raised it higher, watching Melissa's perfectly applied makeup start to crack around the edges. 10 years of marriage, and she picks our anniversary dinner at Romano's, the most expensive steakhouse in downtown Cleveland, to drop this bomb on me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neither was the fact that she'd worn her red dress, the one I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. "To your new life, darling," I said, my voice steady as granite. The words tasted bitter, but I kept smiling. Melissa blinked twice, her confidence wavering. She'd expected tears, maybe begging. Instead, she got Jack Morrison, insurance fraud investigator, doing what he does best, staying 3 steps ahead of the game. "Jack, she started, but her words died as the restaurant door opened. Karen Fletcher walked in first, blonde hair swept back, wearing a navy blue dress that screamed money and class. Behind her came my attorney, David Chen, briefcase in hand, scanning the room until his eyes found our table. And bringing up the rear, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world, was Richard Blackwood, Melissa's boss, her lover, and the man who was about to have the worst night of his life. Melissa's face went white. "What is this?" "This, I said, taking a slow sip of champagne, "is what happens when you underestimate someone who investigates fraud for a living." The restaurant buzzed with quiet conversation, the clink of silverware on expensive china, the soft jazz playing overhead. Romano's catered to Cleveland's elite, corporate executives, politicians, old money families who'd weathered the city's industrial decline. The kind of place where reputations were made and destroyed over $100 steaks. David approached our table, his expression professionally neutral. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm David Chen, your husband's attorney. I need to serve you with some documents." "Documents?" Melissa's voice cracked. "Divorce papers," I said helpfully. "Filed this morning. Infidelity cited as grounds, which in Ohio means you get exactly what you deserve. Nothing." Karen had taken a seat at the bar, close enough to watch the show, but far enough to maintain plausible deniability. Richard stood frozen near the hostess station, probably calculating how fast he could run to the parking lot. "You can't be serious," Melissa whispered. "Dead serious. See, while you were playing house with your boss, I was doing what I do best, gathering evidence. 6 months of surveillance, Mel. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, text messages, photos. Want to see the highlight reel?" I pulled out my phone, swiped to a folder labeled Evidence, and showed her the screen. Her face in Richard's car, kissing him outside the Marriott downtown. The two of them entering his company's executive suite after hours. Richard's company credit card paying for romantic dinners while his wife thought he was working late. "You fool!" She hissed on me. "I'm the fool, that's Rich." I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the moment I'd been planning for months. "Tell me, how did you think this would go? You'd announce you're leaving, I'd roll over and give you half of everything, and you'd ride off into the sunset with your married boss?" David placed the divorce papers on the table, along with a thick manila envelope. "Complete documentation of the infidelity, misuse of company resources, and violation of workplace ethics policies. Your husband has been very thorough." Melissa's hands shook as she reached for the papers. "Jack, please, we can work this out. We don't need to—" "Work it out?" I laughed, loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. "Honey, we worked it out the moment you decided to screw your boss on company time using company money." Richard finally found his courage and approached our table. At 45, he still looked like the college quarterback he'd once been. Tall, broad shoulders, perfectly styled hair, with just enough gray at the temples to look distinguished. The kind of man who'd never been told no in his entire privileged life. "Jack, let's be reasonable here," he said, his voice carrying that smooth corporate tone he probably used to close deals. "This is between you and Melissa. There's no need to involve—" "Involve what? Your wife? Your company? Your 3 kids?" I gestured toward Karen at the bar. "Too late, Pecker. Karen knows everything. Your HR director knows everything. By tomorrow morning, your board of directors will know everything." Richard's face went pale. "You can't prove anything." I opened the manila envelope and spread photographs across the table, like playing cards. Another photo of them leaving together, another photo of them leaving together, Melissa straightening her skirt. "Company policy prohibits relationships between supervisors and subordinates," I said conversationally. "You both signed ethics agreements when Melissa transferred to your department. Violation means immediate termination, no severance package." "This is blackmail," Richard said. "No, this is consequences." Blackmail would be if I asked for money to keep quiet. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just letting the truth come out. Karen stood up from the bar and walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She looked at the photos, then at her husband, then at Melissa. 2 years, she said quietly. 2 years of working late and business trips and me feeling like I was going crazy for being suspicious. Karen, I can explain, Richard started. Explain what? How you used company money to wine and dine your mistress? How you promoted her twice during your affair? How you violated every ethics policy your company has? The restaurant had gone quiet around us. Other diners pretended not to watch while straining to hear every word. The maitre d' hovered nearby, clearly wanting to intervene, but not sure how to handle a situation involving some of the city's most prominent families. Melissa finally found her voice. Jack, this is cruel, even for you. Cruel? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. You want to know what's cruel? Finding out your wife of 10 years has been lying to your face every single day, having her come home from screwing another man and kiss you goodnight, listening to her make plans for our future while she's planning to leave me for someone else. I stood up, throwing my napkin on the table. But you know what the really cruel part is? You thought I was stupid enough not to figure it out. David cleared his throat. Mrs. Morrison, you have 30 days to respond to the filing. Given the evidence of infidelity, I should warn you that Ohio law doesn't look favorably on unfaithful spouses in divorce proceedings. What does that mean? Melissa asked. It means you get nothing, I said. No alimony, no half the house, no retirement funds, just your clothes and whatever debt you've racked up on those credit cards. Richard tried one more time. Jack, surely we can reach some kind of arrangement. The only arrangement you need to worry about is with your wife's divorce attorney and your company's HR department, and probably the IRS, since you've been using company funds for personal expenses. I picked up my champagne flute and drained it in one gulp. The bubbles burned my throat, but it felt appropriate. Everything was burning down tonight. Oh, and Pecker, I said, using the nickname I knew he hated. Karen's friend Jessica is a reporter for the Plain Dealer. She's very interested in stories about corporate corruption and workplace maltreatment. Something about a married executive abusing his position to seduce a subordinate really gets her investigative juices flowing. Richard's face went from pale to green. You wouldn't. I already did. The story runs tomorrow morning. Front page of the business section. The next 48 hours unfolded exactly as I'd planned. With the precision of a controlled demolition, I'd learned patience during my 15 years investigating insurance fraud. How to gather evidence, build an airtight case, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. Melissa and Richard had given me plenty to work with. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. on Thursday morning. Melissa's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. The fifth call in 12 hours. I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading Jessica's article in the Plain Dealer online edition. Corporate executive terminated amid ethics scandal, read the headline, with a smaller subheading, Married VP used company funds for extramarital affair. Jessica had done her homework. Every detail was accurate, every quote properly attributed to sources familiar with the situation. Richard's photo from the company website sat prominently next to the article, along with a breakdown of company policy violations and potential legal ramifications. My landline rang. I glanced at the caller ID, Karen Fletcher. Hello, Karen. Jack, I wanted to thank you. Her voice was steady, controlled. I know this wasn't easy for you either. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. My attorney says I'll get full custody and most of the assets. Richard's going to be paying child support and alimony for a very long time. She paused. What about Melissa? What about her? Are you really going to take everything? I walked to my living room window and looked out at the house Melissa and I had bought 8 years ago. The mortgage was in my name only. Her credit had been too poor to qualify. The cars, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio I'd built through years of careful saving and smart decisions. All of it legally mine. She made her choice, Karen. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I suppose that's fair. Another pause. Richard's moving out today. The company gave him until 5 p.m. to clear out his office. Fast work. The board didn't want the scandal dragging on. They're promoting someone from outside the department to avoid any appearance of impropriety, which meant Melissa would be working for a new boss who knew exactly why the previous one had been fired. Her career at Blackwood Industries was effectively over. My cell phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my sister Jenny. "Holy crap, Jack. Just saw the news. Are you okay?" I typed back, "Never better. Want to get lunch? I'm buying." "Sure, Romano's at noon." Going back to the scene of last night's destruction felt appropriate, like a general surveying a battlefield after victory. Jenny was already waiting when I arrived, sitting at the same table where everything had gone down 12 hours earlier. The maitre d' had given me a knowing look when I made the reservation. Apparently, word had spread among the staff about the previous evening's drama. "You look good for someone whose life just exploded," Jenny said as I sat down. My life didn't explode. Theirs did. Jenny studied my face. At 38, she was 3 years younger than me, but had always been the more perceptive sibling. She could read people like books, which made her an excellent bartender and an occasionally annoying sister. "You're not even a little sad about this?" "About what? The end of my marriage to a lying, cheating woman who was planning to take half my assets and run off with her boss? No, I'm not sad about that." The waiter approached, same guy who'd witnessed last night's fireworks. He looked nervous. "Good afternoon, Mr. Morrison." "The usual?" "Actually, let's celebrate. Bottle of your best champagne." Jenny raised an eyebrow. "Celebrating?" "Freedom." The champagne arrived. Dom Perignon, $300 a bottle. I'd never ordered anything so expensive before, but Melissa's betrayal had taught me something important. Life was too short to settle for less than you deserved. "So what happens now?" Jenny asked as I poured. Now I start over. Sell the house, maybe move somewhere warmer. I've got enough saved to take early retirement if I want." "And Melissa?" "What about her?" "Jack, you destroyed her life, her marriage, her career, her financial security, everything." I took a sip of champagne. It was perfect. Crisp, clean with just a hint of sweetness. She destroyed her own life. I just documented it. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Isn't it? I leaned back in my chair. She made a series of choices, Jenny. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie to me for 2 years. She chose to plan a future with another man while pretending to love me. Every single consequence she's facing is the direct result of her own actions. But you could have handled it differently, quietly, without destroying Richard's family, too. Richard's family was already destroyed. Karen just didn't know it yet. I gave her the truth. What she does with it is her choice. Jenny shook her head. This isn't like you, Jack. You're not vindictive. Maybe I should have been. Maybe if I'd been less understanding, less willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't have wasted 10 years of my life on someone who never loved me. My phone buzzed. Another voicemail from Melissa. I deleted it without listening. She's been calling, Jenny observed. I noticed. You should probably talk to her eventually. There are practical things to work out. The house, belongings, paperwork. David's handling all of that. I don't need to talk to her. Jack, no. I set down my champagne flute harder than necessary. I'm done talking to Melissa. I'm done being understanding and reasonable and accommodating. I spent 10 years trying to make her happy, and she repaid me by screwing her boss and planning to leave me. The time for conversation is over. Jenny was quiet for a moment, studying my face. What if she tries to fight the divorce? Contest the infidelity claim? With what evidence? I have photos, videos, credit card records, hotel receipts, text messages, her own admission last night in front of witnesses. She could hire the best attorney in the state, and she'd still lose. And if she can't afford an attorney, not my problem. The waiter refilled our glasses. Around us, the lunch crowd was picking up. Business executives, lawyers, politicians. The kind of people who understood that power and reputation mattered in this city. By now, most of them had probably heard about Richard's downfall. Cleveland's business community was small and gossipy. I ran into Tom Martinez this morning, Jenny said carefully. Tom was one of my oldest friends, going back to college. He worked in corporate law and moved in the same circles as Richard. And? He said Richard's having trouble finding another job. Word's gotten around. Good. Jack, the man has 3 kids. The man should have thought about his kids before he decided to risk his career for an affair. Jenny sighed. What happened to you? You used to be the guy who helped people, who gave second chances. That guy was a sucker. That guy let people walk all over him because he was too nice to fight back. That guy spent 10 years married to a woman who was planning to destroy him. I finished my champagne and signaled for the check. The old Jack is gone, Jenny. This is who I am now. 3 weeks later, I was packing boxes in what used to be our bedroom when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Tom Martinez standing on my front porch, shifting nervously from foot to foot. Behind him was Mike Stevens, another old friend from our college days. I'd been expecting this visit. Jack, Tom said when I opened the door, we need to talk. About what? About what you did to Richard and Melissa. I stepped aside to let them in. The living room was half empty, furniture covered in dust sheets, boxes stacked against the walls. The house sale had gone through faster than expected. Apparently, my asking price was reasonable enough that buyers were willing to overlook the recent scandal associated with the address. Coffee, I offered. This isn't a social call, Mike said. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Mike was usually the peacekeeper in our group, the guy who smoothed over conflicts and kept everyone together. Then what kind of call is it? Tom sat down on the couch, but Mike remained standing. It's an intervention. An intervention for what? For whatever the hell has happened to you, he said. The Jack we know doesn't destroy people's lives for revenge. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself coffee from the pot I'd made earlier. My hands were steady, my pulse normal. I'd been preparing for this conversation since the day the divorce papers were filed. The Jack you know was a doormat, I said, returning to the living room. The Jack you know let people take advantage of him because he was too polite to fight back. That's not true, Tom said. You were a good guy. Decent. Honorable. Honorable? I laughed. Is it honorable to let your wife cheat on you for 2 years? Is it decent to pretend everything's fine while she's planning to take half your assets and run off with another man? That's not what this is about, and you know it, Mike said. This is about how you handled it. You didn't just divorce her, Jack. You destroyed her. You destroyed Richard. You destroyed their families. I exposed the truth. Everything else was their choice. Tom leaned forward. Richard's kids won't talk to him. His oldest daughter changed her last name. His son got kicked off the baseball team because the other parents complained. Karen had to pull the youngest out of private school because she can't afford the tuition anymore. Karen's getting alimony and child support. She'll be fine. Will she? Her husband of 18 years was having an affair with a woman 10 years younger. Her social circle has completely ostracized her because they don't know how to handle the scandal. She's seeing a therapist twice a week. I sipped my coffee. It was bitter, but I'd gotten used to bitter things lately. And Melissa, Mike continued, she's living in a studio apartment in Lakewood, working as a receptionist at a dental office because no company in the city will hire her. She had to sell her car to pay for groceries. She should have thought about that before she decided to cheat. Jesus Christ, Jack. Mike ran his hands through his hair. Do you even hear yourself? This isn't justice. This is cruelty. This is consequences. Tom stood up, his face flushed. No, this is revenge. Pure and simple. You wanted to hurt them, so you did. You used your skills and your resources to systematically destroy their lives. They destroyed their own lives. I just made sure everyone knew about it. As Mike's voice was rising, you could have divorced her quietly. You could have kept it private. Instead, you turned it into a public spectacle because you wanted them to suffer. And what if I did? What if I wanted the woman who lied to me for 2 years to face some consequences for her actions? What if I wanted the man who helped her betray me to lose something he valued? Then you're not the person we thought you were, Tom said quietly. The words hung in the air between us. I could see the disappointment in their faces, the way they were looking at me like I'd become something foreign and dangerous. Maybe I'm not. And maybe the person you thought you knew was just a facade. Maybe this is who I really am underneath all that Midwestern politeness and Catholic guilt. We don't believe that, Mike said. We've known you for 20 years, Jack. You're better than this. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm exactly where I should be. My cheating wife is gone, her lover is ruined, and I'm free to start over with a clean slate. Sounds like a pretty good outcome to me. Tom shook his head. What about forgiveness? What about mercy? What about all those values you used to talk about? What about self-respect? What about justice? What about not letting people walk all over you? There's a difference between standing up for yourself and destroying people. Is there? Because it seems to me like the only reason anyone cares about Richard and Melissa is because I actually won. If I'd rolled over and let them take half my assets, if I'd been the good guy and handled this quietly, nobody would give a damn about my feelings. Mike and Tom exchanged glances. I could see them having a silent conversation, the kind that comes from decades of friendship. "We can't be part of this," Mike said finally. "Part of what? Whatever you've become. This angry, vindictive person who destroys people for sport." "I destroyed 2 people who betrayed me. That's hardly sport. And what about the next person who crosses you? What about anyone who disappoints you or hurts your feelings? Are you going to systematically ruin their lives too?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at my oldest friends. Tom, who'd been my best man at the wedding. Mike, who'd helped me move into this house. Who'd spent countless Sunday afternoons watching football and drinking beer on this very couch. If they betray me the way Melissa did, absolutely. The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the street, the normal sounds of suburban life continuing despite the drama unfolding in my living room. "Then we're done," Tom said. "I can't be friends with someone who thinks like that." "Neither can I," Mike added. The Jack we knew would never have said something like that. They headed for the door. I followed them, my footsteps echoing in the mostly empty house. "You'll change your minds," I said as they reached the porch. "Give it a few months, let the dust settle, and you'll see that I did the right thing." Tom turned back to look at me. "No, Jack, we won't. 'Cause what you did wasn't right, it was just effective." They walked to Tom's car without looking back. I watched them drive away, then close the door and return to my packing. 2 hours later, my sister Jenny called. "Tom Martinez just called me," she said without preamble. And he's worried about you. So is Mike. So am I. Everyone's worried about poor Jack. Nobody was worried about me when my wife was cheating. That's not fair and you know it. We would have been there for you if you had told us what was happening. Would you? Or would you have told me to try counseling, to work it out, to be the bigger person? Jenny was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but that doesn't justify what you've done. What I've done is take control of my own life, and for the first time in years, by destroying other people's lives, by refusing to be a sufferer. There's a difference between not being a sufferer and becoming a monster, Jack. The word hung between us like a physical thing, monster. Is that what I'd become?" "I'm not a monster," I said quietly. "Then prove it. Call Melissa, apologize, help her get back on her feet." "Never." "Then you are a monster, and I can't be part of that either." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it aside and went back to packing. By evening, the house was nearly empty. Just the essentials left. Bed, coffee maker, a few changes of clothes. The moving truck would come tomorrow to take everything to storage until I decided where I wanted to settle next. I was sitting on the floor of my empty living room, eating takeout Chinese food and drinking beer, when my phone rang one last time. Melissa's name appeared on the screen. After 3 weeks of ignored calls, I finally answered. "Hello, Melissa." "Jack." Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. "Thank you for answering. What do you want?" "I want to apologize. For everything, for the affair, for the lies, for the way I handled things. You didn't deserve any of it." I took a sip of beer and said nothing. "I know you hate me," she continued. "I know you probably want me to suffer for what I did. But I need you to know that I did love you. Maybe not the way you deserved, maybe not enough to stay faithful, but I did love you." Funny way of showing it. I know I screwed up everything. I know I hurt you in ways that can never be fixed. But Jack, what you've done, it's destroyed me, completely. I have nothing left. You have your freedom. Isn't that what you wanted? Not like this. Not with my career ruined, my reputation destroyed, my family ashamed of me. I can't even get a decent job because everyone in the city knows what happened. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat. I know I deserve consequences. I know I deserve to be punished. But this is beyond punishment. This is obliteration. I finished my beer and opened another one. "What do you want from me, Melissa?" "I want you to call off the dogs, stop the media campaign, stop having your friends spread stories about me. Let me try to rebuild my life." "I'm not having anyone spread stories. I told the truth once, and the truth spread itself. Please, Jack, I'm begging you. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I'll give up any claim to anything. I'll disappear from your life completely. Just please stop destroying me." I looked around my empty house at the boxes stacked by the door, at the life I was preparing to leave behind. "It's too late for that," I said. "You made your choice 2 years ago. Now you get to live with it. Jack." I hung up and turned off the phone. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was living in a beachfront condo in Sarasota, Florida, when Karen Fletcher called with news that would complete my transformation from sufferer to victor. Jack, I thought you should know. Richard's dead. I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunset paint the Gulf of Mexico in shades of orange and gold. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. What happened? Heart attack, massive one. He was found in his apartment yesterday morning. Richard had been living alone in a one-bedroom place near downtown Cleveland, the kind of building where people went to disappear from their old lives. His divorce from Karen had been finalized a month after mine from Melissa, leaving him with minimal assets and maximum debt. How old was he? I asked. 46. His doctor said the stress probably contributed to it. The job loss, the divorce, the public humiliation. His body just gave out. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Some recognition that a man was dead, that 3 children had lost their father, that my actions had played a role in the chain of events that led to this moment. Instead, I felt nothing. Are you there, Jack? I'm here. How are his kids taking it? About as well as you'd expect. The funeral's Thursday. I thought you might want to know. Thanks for calling. Jack, are you going to come back for it? No, I don't think that would be appropriate. Maybe not, but he wasn't evil, you know? He was just weak. He made terrible choices, but he wasn't a bad person. If you say so. I do say so, and I think deep down, you know it too. After she hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the waves roll in and thinking about the man I'd helped destroy. Richard Blackwood, former corporate vice president, former husband and father, former threat to my marriage. Now just a name in the obituaries, a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing business with pleasure. The next morning, I drove to a coffee shop in downtown Sarasota and opened my laptop. The Cleveland Plain Dealer's website had a brief obituary. Richard Blackwood, 46, died suddenly at his home on Tuesday. A former executive at Blackwood Industries, he is survived by 3 children and his ex-wife, Karen Fletcher. Services will be held Thursday at St. Mary's Catholic Church. No mention of the scandal that had ended his career. No reference to the affair that had destroyed his family. Just the basic facts of a life that had ended too soon. I closed the laptop and walked to the beach. The sand was warm under my feet, the Gulf breeze carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. Around me, tourists and retirees enjoyed another perfect Florida day, blissfully unaware of the drama that had played out 1,000 miles north. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. Heard about Richard. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine. Want to talk? Nothing to talk about. She didn't respond, but I could imagine her sitting in her apartment in Cleveland, shaking her head at her brother who'd become a stranger. That afternoon, I got a call from David Chen, my attorney. Jack, I have some news about Melissa. What about her? She's filed for bankruptcy, Chapter 7. She's losing everything. I was sitting in a restaurant overlooking Sarasota Bay, eating stone crab claws, and drinking white wine. The kind of lunch that would have cost me a week's salary back in Cleveland. Everything? The apartment, the car, what little savings she had left. The legal fees from fighting the divorce cleaned her out, and she hasn't been able to find steady work. What happens now? Now she starts over with nothing. No assets, no credit, no references for employment. It's about as complete a financial destruction as I've ever seen. And legally? Legally, she's bulletproof now. Can't be sued, can't have wages garnished. Sometimes bankruptcy is a fresh start. After David hung up, I sat in the restaurant for another hour, thinking about Melissa's complete and total defeat. The woman who'd planned to take half my assets and start a new life with her lover was now living in a homeless shelter. According to the private investigator I'd hired to keep tabs on her. That evening, I called the investigator. Give me an update on Melissa Morrison. She's at the Salvation Army shelter on West 25th Street. Been there for 2 weeks. Works part-time at a fast food place, minimum wage. Takes the bus because she can't afford a car. Anyone helping her? Family, friends? Her parents disowned her after the scandal broke. Her sister sends money occasionally, but not much. She's pretty much on her own. And her health? Physically, she's fine. Mentally, well, she looks like someone who's given up. Lost a lot of weight. Doesn't take care of herself like she used to. I hung up and walked out to my balcony. Below me, the pool area was lit with soft lighting, couples and families enjoying their vacation. The American dream in miniature, prosperity, leisure, happiness, everything I'd worked for, everything Melissa had tried to take away from me. My phone rang. Jenny again. I heard about Melissa, she said without preamble. Heard what? That she's homeless, living in a shelter. Where did you hear that? Does it matter? Jack, this has gone too far. You've won. You've destroyed both of them completely. Isn't that enough? I poured myself a scotch from the bottle I kept on the side table. 25-year-old single malt. The kind of luxury I'd never allowed myself when I was married. Enough for what? Enough revenge, enough punishment, enough cruelty. I haven't done anything to either of them in months. Whatever's happening to them now is the natural consequence of their own actions. Bees, you set this chain of events in motion and you know it. They set it in motion when they decided to have an affair. Jack, listen to yourself. A man is dead. A woman is homeless. 3 children have lost their father. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I took a sip of scotch and watched a pelican dive for fish in the bay below. It means that actions have consequences, I said. It means that people who betray trust and break promises sometimes pay a heavy price for their choices. And what about you? What price are you paying? What do you mean? I mean you've lost everyone who ever cared about you. Tom won't speak to you. Mike won't speak to you. I barely speak to you. You're alone in Florida with your money and your revenge, and you don't seem to care that you've become someone none of us recognize. I'm exactly who I always was underneath. The only difference is I stopped pretending to be someone else. No, the difference is you stopped being human. The line went dead. I finished my scotch and went inside to pack. Tomorrow, I was flying to the Cayman Islands for a week-long vacation. After that, maybe Europe. I had enough money to travel anywhere I wanted, to do anything I pleased. Freedom, I'd learned, was the ultimate revenge. The next morning, as my plane lifted off from Sarasota-Bradenton International Airport, I looked down at the coastline, disappearing below, and thought about the life I'd left behind in Cleveland. The friends who'd abandoned me, the sister who thought I was a monster, the ex-wife living in a homeless shelter. None of it mattered anymore. I'd won the only game that counted, the game of survival. While they were all struggling with consequences and guilt and regret, I was free to start over wherever I wanted. As the plane banked toward the Caribbean, I smiled and ordered a champagne. The flight attendant, a pretty blonde who reminded me a little of Karen Fletcher, smiled back. Celebrating something special, she asked. You could say that, I replied. I'm celebrating the end of my old life and the beginning of my new one. Sounds wonderful. What do you do for a living? I used to investigate fraud, I said. Now I'm retired. Retired? You look too young to retire. Let's just say I had a very successful final case. She laughed and moved on to the next passenger. I settled back in my first-class seat and closed my eyes, thinking about white sand beaches and crystal clear water, and a future with no complications. Behind me in Cleveland, Richard Blackwood was being buried while his children wept, and his ex-wife wondered how everything had gone so wrong. Melissa Morrison was probably getting ready for another shift at McDonald's, counting quarters for bus fare and wondering if she'd ever have a real life again. But that was their problem now, not mine. I'd played the game by their rules, lies, betrayal, selfishness, and I'd won. The fact that winning had cost me everything else just proved how corrupt the game had been from the beginning. As the plane crossed into international airspace, I raised my champagne glass in a silent toast to the man I used to be, the trusting fool who'd believed in love and loyalty and second chances. That man was dead now, as dead as Richard Blackwood, as dead as my marriage to Melissa. In his place sat someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that in a world full of hunters, the only choice was to become the apex hunter yourself. The plane flew on toward paradise, carrying me away from the wreckage of my old life and toward whatever came next. I was finally, completely, perfectly free.